outside? Should I run and hide? How do I take my company worldwide? Do you love the law? Did you watch Hee-Haw? What's the weirdest thing that you ever saw? What's it like in court? Favorite sport? Can you help with my book report? Is my hair too long? Am I right or wrong? And do you mind if I sing along to anything? Ask Alan anything in the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Ask Alan, the podcast. I'm Alan Crone, the CEO of the Crone Law Firm, and it's my pleasure to introduce to everybody Jeff Medici, who is one of the founders and owners of Fury Athletix. Jeff is one of the founders and owners of Fury Athletix. So, Jeff, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, so much for having us. It's been a pleasure sort of starting this thing off a couple months ago, and we look forward to getting the word out about our great company and our great story.
Well, let's get right to that. Tell me about Fury Athletix, what you do, where you came from.
Well, Fury Athletix was really born about 3 years ago. I'm a real estate developer by trade. I've been in the real estate development business for about 10 years, but 3 years ago, I acquired this parcel of land in this development that I own. And we had this sort of extra little parcel that we didn't know what to do with. We knew we were going to build a beautiful 4-story mixed-use building, but with this little sort of knuckle that sort of hung off the end of the property, we were like, what are we going to do? And it just sort of popped in there. I decided to build the world's largest stainless steel dragon, and you can see a picture of a model of it right behind me.
Yeah.
The dragon is 40 feet wide, 28 and a half feet tall, and sits majestically right in our development, right off the highway. But one of the things that sort of intrigued me is I flew out to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium out in Atlanta, and I saw the beautiful Falcon that they had out there. And every person that came in to get their picture in front of the Falcon immediately walked over to the team store. And I said, with the love of the Dragons here in Southlake, Texas, which is where I live and where my business is, every school, all 11 schools, their mascot is the dragon. So Southlake Carroll is known far and wide as the home of the dragon. And it was shocking to me that there was not a single statue or monument of a dragon. So I decided to build that. And when I saw what they had done out at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I said, you know what? I think there's something there. We're going to have thousands of people that are going to be coming to view this beautiful, majestic monument. And I said, we've got a captured audience right there. And I said, well, how can we sort of, leverage this? And I've loved hats my entire life, ever since I served in the Air Force back in the early 90s to 1999. And I just said, we're going to start a hat company. And, anybody that knows sort of me, I don't do anything sort of half-ass. I go full steam ahead. And we spent a good 2.5 years just working on the product to try to get it right.
Well, very good. Well, let me ask you a question that just kind of suggests itself to me. This sounds like a business idea that 20 years ago wouldn't have flown because people don't, the Instagram effect, if you will. I mean, people don't travel long distances or even short distances to take pictures back then, but they do now, don't they?
Well, and it's funny you say that, because it was really important to me to make sure that we got all the details correct. And actually, the idea came to me as a result of my daughter turning 16 years old now 3 years ago. And we asked her what she wanted to do for her 16th birthday. And she said, I'd like to get in a sort of party bus and go to Dallas and get dressed up in fancy clothes and go to a fancy dinner. And we said, that's great. Well, I had come up with a little sort of twist to it. I said, in this age of selfies, what we're going to do is we're going to text her clues, her and her friends' clues, and then she'd have to figure it out, tell the driver where to take them, and then they'd get a selfie. And when they did that, I was actually looking online at the top 10 selfie locations in Dallas, and one of them happened to be this beautiful statue monument that was created by this local artist who's actually received a lot of sort of national and international acclaim. And his name's Brad Oldham. And I was like, that's beautiful. And I said, boom, that's what we're going to do. We're going to build the world's largest stainless steel dragon. And I actually got in touch with Brad Oldham, and we built it. And again, we launched it on August 6th. We kept this a secret for 3 years. And I'll tell you, after serving 6 years as an Air Force intelligence officer, I was charged with keeping a lot of secrets. But this one, I thought there was no way in 3 years that it wasn't going to get out.
Right.
And And it didn't. It never got out until the day of the launch. And there wasn't a single post. There wasn't a single picture. There wasn't a rumor, nothing. I mean, we had 4 scissor lifts that went 35 feet up and completely surrounded it with a tarp. And so that's sort of how the idea was born. But we have the ability, when we designed it in a certain way, the building that I built adjacent to it has a 4th story patio. And we have a little plaque on the top of the patio where if a photographer stands there and a person stands behind on the opposite side of the dragon, puts their hands up, it looks like you're actually flying on the back of the dragon. So we went to a great lengths to try to get the details right on this. And we wanted folks that when they came, we wanted the perfect selfie shot. And we think we nailed it.
Well, very good. At the risk of digressing, I want to thank you for your service in the Air Force. Here in Memphis, one of our suburbs is Collierville, and they're the Dragons as well. So maybe it might be a franchise opportunity there.
You never know. Actually, my sister and her husband moved to Memphis with Coca-Cola, and they lived in Collierville until just a few years ago when they moved to Atlanta. So you never know. You never know.
That's right. So the store is in Fury Athletix. Is it just hats, or is it all kinds of sports apparel?
Yeah, so I've sort of going back to my business school days, I've really sort of been trained and it's been ingrained in me to really make sure that you know who you are and you focus on what you do best. So there are a lot of companies out there, a lot of apparel companies where headwear, hats, visors, headbands is just sort of secondary to what they do. And I was just really intent on making sure that we built this company the right way. And for me, the right way was focus on the headwear. Everything else will sort of fall. Once we grow the brand and the brand is known throughout the land, we'll start looking at other things. I mean, we have some apparel, but we only sell that apparel out of the Airstream that we have, which is adjacent to the Dragon. And when we take that on the road to different sporting events and community events, we do have T-shirts and polo shirts and pullovers, but to the sort of the internet world, we are an athletic headwear company, and that's what we want to make sure that we get done the right way. If we do that, everything else will sort of take care of itself.
Well, it seems to me that there are a couple of different ways you could go. Are you pure retail, or are you also doing hats for teams and selling direct to in bulk, that sort of thing?
So we really have sort of a 3-pronged approach to our sales strategy. The first one is obviously FuryAthletics.com. That's where we're going to be able to get the most reach that we possibly can. And when I say FuryAthletics.com, it's Fury Athletics with an X. And the reason we did that is because every single hat that we make has the unique X in the top of the hat. That was done intentionally, because when you see most people that wear hats, they don't have the big sort of Fury logo or Nike logo on the front. It's normally sort of banished to the side or the back. And what is more prominent is the sports team, the Clemson Tigers, the Texas Rangers, or the golf course that you're playing, Augusta National, right? That's what normally gets in the front. So I came up with this idea to incorporate the X into the top of the hat so that you could easily know that is a Fury Athletics hat, even if that front logo happens to be, a Texas Rangers logo, for example. So that was done intentionally, but the Fury Athletics that you can see there, see a couple of little videos. That's why Fury Athletics is sort of misspelled, if you will. But the Fury Athletics website is obviously very important for us to get as much reach out to the masses as mass market as we possibly can. Second approach is we actually do have an Airstream. I think there's might be a few pictures on here that show our 28-foot custom Airstream that we take on the road. We bring that Airstream to, like I said, different community events. Last weekend we were at a marathon, and actually, probably if you scroll up, I think you can see it probably at the top.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's the Dragon.
Yep, there you go. So there's the Airstream on the left, and there's our Dragon on the right.
Very cool.
There. Yeah, and then the third one is our retail approach to looking at different, like you said, sports teams, different golf clubs. We recently, and we haven't announced it yet, but we recently became the official hat of a very, very, very well-known golf community. Most people would actually know it. And we actually co-branded with them. So their logo is now going to replace ours on the front, and then we'll be on the side right here. But again, all of the hats, that's something that we will not waver on. Is we got to have the X in the top of that.
Right. So so what's your so is your strategy essentially to grow partners like that so that you can have the what I'll call a private label, licensed label, as well as your own logos?
Absolutely. I mean, most of the folks that we talk to, most of the sort of B2B folks, they want their logo on the front. And I fully respect that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to build the best performing athletic hats in the marketplace. Like I said, if we focus on that and make the hat the best that it possibly can be, I'm fine with us sort of going on the side and letting everybody else have the front. But we do want to grow that brand. And part of growing that brand, we think, is having a robust, web platform and social media strategy to get the brand's sort of message about how great these hats are and how high performing these hats are. So we won't be quick to give up that front on the social media side on our web platform, FuryAthletics.com. So,
well, tell me a little bit about what separates your hats from, what I can buy on the internet. I would imagine if you're building a brand with where the hat is the difference maker, what are the features that you think separate your hat from other hats?
Well, I think the biggest thing is what we did is we sat down and we thought about what each sport actually wants in a hat. Because if you're a runner, you would need something very different than if you're a golfer, correct? So our running hats, we call it the Sprinter, is actually made from a machine washable fabric that when you get done running, you're sweating all over. I mean, nothing drives you crazier than all the sweat marks that you have in the front. Yeah. You can take this hat, literally throw it in the wash, and it comes out looking almost brand new. And we tested this fabric for a number of months, just continuously throwing it in the washer to make sure that this thing would perform, and that after 20, 30, 40 washes, it still looks just as good as when you pulled it out of the box, the hat box. Whereas if you're on the golf course, right, you want a little ventilation, and we actually have one. This is actually, of course, I had to have my Clemson hat, right?
There you go.
Got to have my Clemson orange and purple. But if you look at it, the perforation are a little golf ball and tee, right? So we wanted people to easily recognize this is a golf hat, number one, because you can see the little perforation. But we wanted to make sure that we picked great material that was breathable and allowed you, when you're out there sweating just a little bit playing golf, that you had that airflow going to and from. And then we've got other hats again for other sports, but we wanted to make sure that we thought about the sport. And part of that was partnering with a couple of buddies of mine who were former professional athletes, Mark Knowles and Brent Jones. Mark was the #1 doubles player in the world, one of the few guys that actually has a Wimbledon, US Open, Australian Open, and French Open trophy. He's won all 4 Grand Slams in doubles. And then Brent Jones, who was a 3-time Super Bowl winner with San Francisco, was an all-pro tight end, catching passes from Joe Montana and Steve Young. So they're a couple of friends of mine. And when I came up with this idea for Fury Athletics, I approached them and I said, listen, I want your knowledge and the credibility that they bring about what would be, if they were designing a hat for football or for tennis, well, how would you do it? So specifically, we challenged Mark Knowles. We said, listen, you've been there, done that, played on the ATP. He's actually still a board member of the ATP. How would you build the hat? So we gave him sort of free rein to build the best tennis hat that he could. and we actually co-branded with him, so he's got a little MK logo on the back. But that was important to us because, I grew up playing golf. I started playing golf when I was 10, played baseball all growing up. So I consider myself an athlete, certainly not to the level of some of my partners. But, I've been, like I said, I've been wearing hats for a long time. I think I know what needs to go into a good golf hat. I got to caddy on the PGA Tour for my uncle for 25 events or so. And so I personally designed the golf hat, but some of these other sports, I don't know. So that was it.
Very good. So so you're designing hats and marketing hats for use, as opposed to what most of us think of a hat, sports hat. It's a billboard, right? I mean, you're grabbing a hat because it's got a Clemson logo on it, or a Memphis logo, or Los Angeles Rams. But you're building them like Nike builds shoes to help performance.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, because Nike is sort of a perfect example. Titleist is sort of another perfect example. When I asked a lot of my friends, as we were sort of coming up with the concepts for this company, I asked them, I said, what was the number one golf hat in the world 10 years ago? And the first answer is always one of two things. It's Nike or Titleist. And I looked at them, I said, is Nike a golf hat company? And they're like, no, right? I mean, Nike's they started with basketball shoes. Is Titleist a golf hat company? No, they started with golf balls, right? And they got into equipment. They're throwing their logo on there, but the hat is, people are buying that hat for one reason, just because of the logo, right? And they've earned that right. And maybe one day we'll get there, but I don't think we'll ever lose focus on the fact that our hats are performing just like Titleist golf balls, what those golf balls do for the Titleist brand, what those Nike basketball shoes do for the Nike brand, right? That's our thing. And we want to make sure that we build those in a way that we sort of never forget that is our focus. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't sort of jumped into apparel, because I don't think that we can be what we really want to be if we spread ourselves so thin that we're trying to be everything to everybody.
Right. And, that's a lesson a lot of business people never really learn, myself included. As someone once said to me, the riches are in the niches. And, if you do one thing really, really, really well and become known for that one thing, you can be tremendously successful. And then as you branch out, if you stay true to that mission, I wouldn't expect you to if you went on to a next line, for it to be shoes or jackets or something like that, because there's a next hat. In other words, what is it that sports suppliers are just knocking out because nobody really knows that they can be a better mousetrap? And I think that's a great business model. I think it's very cool.
Well, and when you think about it, Alan, if I were to ask you, what's the number one athletic hat in the world made exclusively by a company whose focus is on athletic hats? I ask this question of a lot of folks. What's the number one athletic hat in the world? And immediately they go Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, right? And then I go, well, they're not athletic hat companies, right? So I said, now I'm going to ask you the next question. What's the number one athletic hat company in the world that is made by a company focused, where their number one focus is on athletic hats? And I just get this dumb look like, I can't think of one. And I said, that will be different 5 years from now.
Yeah.
5 years from now, you'll be saying Fury Athletics is the number one athletic hat maker in the world, built by athletic hat in the world, built by a company focused on athletic hats.
Well, very good. I think that's a laudable goal and tremendous business opportunity, because you've essentially invented a whole category of business, because it wasn't one before. So you said you were a real estate developer in your other life. How'd you decide to go into retail slash, merchandising as opposed to real estate developing? And I'll disclose to you on the front end, I am a frustrated real estate developer. If I could go back and wave a magic wand, I'd love to be able to do what you do. So how did you make that leap?
Well, it's sort of, Alan, it's sort of a long circuitous path. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I grew up in Massachusetts, always felt like the stork dropped me off at the wrong house. I was never meant to live up in the cold. I went to Clemson undergrad to play golf. But when I got down there, I fell in love with Air Force ROTC and did 4 years of ROTC there, and then went in as a second lieutenant in the Air Force and served 6 years as an Air Force intelligence officer. I had the best possible 6 years you could imagine. Met my wife, who was an Air Force dental officer at the Pentagon, largest office building in the world, and our little offices were almost right next to one another. But the challenge was they trained me to be an electronic warfare officer, and part of that was, the advent of information warfare back in '99. So when I came out in 2000 out of the Air Force, I was actually one of the few folks out there in the private sector that had some real world network attack and penetration experience. This is way before the internet really started getting going. So PricewaterhouseCoopers hired me very quickly to lead their team in doing network attack and penetrations on their clients. So I did that, and ultimately I got hired a couple of years later by Fidelity Investments to become their first chief information security officer. The problem was that wasn't where my heart was. And I did go back, and I thank Fidelity for letting me go back and get my MBA in 04 and 05 down at Duke. But when I came back, they made me VP of institutional sales and moved me to Westlake, Texas, which is where my wife always wanted to be. She's a Texan. So we moved here in 07, and literally we were here 2 weeks, and I looked at my wife and I said, this is supposed to be a 3-4 year assignment. I'm supposed to go back to the mothership back in Boston, but I've already got my burial plot picked out in the backyard. I'm never leaving. And I knew that the day was going to come when I was going to have to sort of make a decision. And that day came on December 28th, 2011, when I walked into my kitchen. My wife looked at me and said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I'm not happy." And she goes, "Well, what's wrong?" I said, "I'm just not happy in my job. I'm just turned 40 years old." I said, I want to do something else. She goes, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I think I'm going to take the advice I've been given so many times in my life and never taken." And she goes, "What's that?" I said, "I'm going to follow my passion." She goes, what are you passionate about? And I said, "Building Legos." And she goes, "Yeah, that's a hobby. That's not a job." I said, "No, I think I'm going to become a real estate developer. I mean, it's basically just like a big Lego set." And she's like, so what does that mean, real estate developer? Like, what are you talking about building? I said, hotels, office buildings, like high-rise stuff. She goes, "You can't replace the plunger in the toilet. How are you going to do this?" I said, "I'm going to hire a lot of smart people." And that's what I did. And then 21 days later, on January 17th, I went and toured a 15-acre parcel of land right off the highway here in Southlake, Texas, and put it under agreement and quit my job and became a real estate developer overnight. And that led me to develop a hotel here in Southlake, only our second hotel ever. And then I developed the office building that I'm actually sitting in now, a 4-story mid-rise Class A office building. And then sort of the last sort of component of this development is the 4-story mixed-use building with our dragon here.
With the dragon. Yeah.
With our dragon, yeah. And the great news about all this is I actually still get to play with Legos. Every building that I do, I actually build a model of it in Legos before I actually build it for real. So the new building that we just started, and I don't know if you can see pictures very easily on your screen, but I built this. It took me about.
Oh, wow.
Took me about 4 months to build it. And
very cool.
Yeah. And it's about 5 feet long, sits in our lobby right here. And unbeknownst to me, I thought this was just sort of a cool thing to do. Turns out every prospective tenant for the new building starts and ends their tour here in the first building. They don't even almost want to go look at the new building. They just stand walking around the Legos and they're like, "Okay, so we're going to be right here. This is going to be my window. This is where I'm going to look out." And it really has worked out well. came up with a strategy of we ordered these Lego boxes, looked just like Lego boxes, and then we printed on them the picture of the building, and it made it look exactly like a Lego box. And then we stuffed it with some cookies and a little brochure, for the building.
Yeah.
And then we brought it to about 150 different businesses around the area, and dropped it off literally right at their front door. Just cold call, just walked in, said, "Here you go," and we signed 2 leases from it. And I don't know if you know what real estate brokerage commissions run you, but they're steep. And when you don't have to pay them, you can, it really sort of works out. So I told my wife, I said, listen, it was worth 4 months of having these Legos scattered all over the house. So it all worked out. But
That's great. For those people listening that are aspiring entrepreneurs, and it really doesn't matter what you're thinking about doing, that is a great story because it shows how to be authentic and memorable by doing something that's right in your wheelhouse. You don't have to, if you're dealing in Legos, don't worry about Legos. It's not the Legos isn't the point. It's that what I love about that story is you took something that was personal to you and you turned it into a tremendous asset for your business. And if you told somebody ahead of time, well, this is what I'm going to do, they probably would have said Legos. Are you crazy? But once you see the output of it, it's very cool. So kudos to you for that.
Well, that's been basically my whole career, being told, like, what are you doing? You're going, nobody in my family had ever served in the military. And my parents obviously were very proud of my service. But when I first told them to go in the military, they're like, where is that coming from? And what I have found in my entire life, and you hit the nail right in the head, the more authentic you are, the more things that you do that you are passionate about, the money will follow. I'll tell you, at 4 years old, quit your job at Fidelity Investments and go out and become a real estate developer with no real estate experience. People thought I had lost my mind, right? But what I knew is the advice that I'd been given so many times, and that was find what you're passionate about and the money will follow. It might not follow immediately, but you tend to put more effort and time and energy into things that you enjoy. And I would tell you, every day for 10 straight years since I started Medici Development Partners and now Fury Athletix, every single day I wake up raring, like so excited to come to work, and the money ends up coming, following you, right? And like I said, it was hard for some people to sort of understand that, but for me, it just really has worked, and that's been my experience. And that's why I got into hats, right? I would not have gotten into making something else that I was not passionate about. I literally, the running joke is, the only time you'll ever see Jeff without a hat on is a wedding, funeral, or in front of city council. That's it, right? And most folks think I don't even have any hair. I actually do. I'm not losing any of my hair. They think I'm bald under there, but because I'm so passionate about hats, I'm like, that's why we're in this business. Even though
that begs this question, Jeff. Why are you passionate about hats? I wear socks every day, and I'm not passionate about socks. So just wearing a hat every day doesn't count. What makes you passionate about it? Well,
so you see my hair, right? It's pretty short. I've kept my hair really short since my Air Force days. So I never grow it long. But when I grew up, I had this cowlick, right? I have this cowlick right here. Mm-hmm. That you just, unless I got a perm, I can't get it out. Of course, I'm not going to get a perm. And it's just this big cowlick. So I just got used to wearing a hat to sort of hide the cowlick that I could not get rid of. And then I go into the Air Force, and of course you're wearing a hat all the time. And then my hair was a lot shorter than it is now. So, you serve 4 years in ROTC in the reserves and 6 years active duty, you spend 10 years wearing a hat every day. And then all of a sudden you come out, and it's all of a sudden, it's like, you get dressed in the morning, like, where's my cover? And I just sort of got used to wearing hats, and it just sort of stuck.
Well, very good. Very good. So, again, I'm assuming that it's not an either or. You're pursuing both of these business enterprises together. But you talked a little bit about the 3-year journey to start Fury Athletix. What was the driving force behind saying, this is more than just something I'm thinking about doing as an adjunct to a statue? How did that come about?
Well, I mean, listen, anybody can just sort of start a brand and sell a few things out of the back of a truck, right? When I got asked about starting this real estate business and I told them I wanted to do hotels and office buildings, virtually to a man or woman that I spoke to said, why don't you start with something easy, like a small little garden office or a little strip center? I'm like, I'm 40 years old. I don't have time. That would have been great to start at 25, but I'm 40. If I want to I challenge myself in every sort of aspect of my life. And I'm like, we're going right. I think the city of Southlake needs another hotel. So somebody's going to end up building the second hotel. We had one, the Hilton, and it was killing it. And we, this was a tough time. We're just coming out of the recession, the Great Recession from 07 to 10. And I come in and do this. I mean, the funding for all these projects had completely dried up in those 3 years. And I saw us starting to come out and jumped on this land and got it for steel. And I'm a big supply demand guy. I beat this into my team, into my children. I'm like, it doesn't matter whether it's widgets, what kind of widget it is, right? Find an imbalance between supply and demand. It doesn't matter what it is, and you will be a success, right? So I saw an imbalance. I saw RevPAR numbers and occupancy numbers from the Hilton that were just unbelievable. And I'm like, this city can use a second hotel and can absorb another 175 rooms of hotel rooms. So I said, we're gonna start with a hotel. And it didn't sort of matter that I had never built one before. I knew if we built one, it would be a success. So I just had to figure out how to do that. And then the office sort of came along with it. And now we're doing mixed use buildings and it's been a blast. But when it comes to Fury Athletix, I don't do anything just, again, to try to make a few dollars right now. I'm trying to build something that's going to last forever. So that's why I don't get hung up if we only have 10 sales in a weekend or 5 sales in a, online in a day. Tell the guys, do not worry. Okay. We're building this for the long term. We're not building this because I've got to put food on my family's table. And I'm blessed because Medici Development Partners has thrived and has flourished and is now able to, expand into doing this other business, which is 180 degrees away from real estate development. But we have some unique components that you just can't. You can't replicate, right? We kept this dragon a secret for 3 years. Keeping a secret like this from 30,000 residents in Southlake was hard. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of because I was really nervous about it getting out. And then, of course, you get 30,000 opinions, right? And then, is it too big? It's too this, it's too that. Is it in the right location? It's too shiny. And I knew that if we sort of went down that road, it could be dead before DOA, and it might never even get done. So keeping the secret was really, really important. But we let the city council know what we were doing, and it was all privately funded. So it wasn't, we had no public dollars going towards it. But yeah, we built this for the long term, and I'm excited. I split my time, between Medici Development and Fury Athletix, but I got a great COO for Fury Athletix. She's been with me for 13 years now, and I've seen her grow up since she was just a young woman, and now she's taken over. Her name's Lauren Carr, and Lauren's been championing the launch of Fury Athletix and building the team around Fury, and she's just done a bang up job. I couldn't be happier with her.
That's the key in it. You got to have good people around you, people that are smarter than you. I always try to find people that are smarter than me. I started with my wife. I made sure my wife was smarter than me, and went from there. But that, so from the development side, you got anything on the drawing board you can talk about? What's next?
So one of the things that I was also sort of taught early on was again, don't spread yourself too thin. We've been very, very successful with the projects that we've done, but we only do one big project every 3 years, right? It takes about a year of sort of planning, a year of construction, a year of lease up. And I've been very, very reluctant to jump sort of full speed ahead with 3 or 4 of these at once. If you come to my buildings, what you'll find is the details are there. And they're there because I'm there and I'm present. And I walk the building. I know every square inch of the building, and things are where they are because I thought it was important for them to be there. You lose that when you start going, I need to do 10 of these. There's just no way you can do it. So for me, and it sounds sort of cliche, but I don't do it for the money, right? If I built 10 of these, I'd probably make 10 times as much money, but I don't. I mean, it's sort of weird. You spend your whole life sort of going like this, right? Then you get to a point and you go, the money's not as important. Then it starts going down. I'm already there, right? I don't need any more things. I turned 50 2 weeks ago. So I think there's something sort of special about turning 50. And now it's all about memories. And I tell people, I'm like, when I made this decision at 40, I looked at the hourglass. And there was about the same number of grains of sand in the top as there were on the bottom. And when you're young, you get all these grains of sand up in the top. And you're so cavalier about how you spend those grains of sand, right? Because you get so many. But at 40, you look at it and you start going, I don't have nearly as many as I thought I had. And that's why I really made this decision. Because if I didn't make the decision then, I was going to be wasting a lot of those grains of sand in my 40s that I'd never get back. And that would really set me up for my 50s and 60s and how I would spend those. So right now, what I do when I wake up every morning, I go, how am I spending my grains of sand today? And I would tell you that's what gives me the most joy, is that I spend it with a great team. I mean, a team that people would kill for. And I have my wife, 22 years of marriage, and two great kids, one at Clemson, sophomores, civil engineer.
Yeah.
Because I got annoyed at my civil engineer about 2.5 years ago. And I said, Allison, you're going to become a civil engineer. I'm tired of it. So it really sort of upset her when she came home for Christmas last winter. And I go, Allison, is it too late to change to mechanical engineer? And she goes, why? I said, because I can't stand my mechanical engineer. You got to change to mechanic. She's like, I can't change now. And so she's sticking the course. And but it's been a process. Like I said, I can't have done it without a bunch of great people. And it starts back in the Air Force. Again, my first commander in the Air Force, Colonel Al Whitley. He's like a second father to me. Whipped me into shape while I was just a young cadet. And we still talk every few weeks to this day. And I think that under his leadership and tutelage and just his advice and counsel, he was not nice towards me. I mean, towards the things that I did, but deep down, I always knew that he had my best interest at heart. And that's why for 30 years, he's been one of my closest confidants that I have. And he's made me a big part of who I am is a direct reflection of those years that I spent with him down at Clemson.
Now, I realize this is a softball question, but I think it's important, particularly for people that maybe young people that might be listening to this that are trying to decide what to do with their lives. And I'm not just saying this. I have never met a former military officer or member that wasn't just extremely well prepared to accomplish missions. And how does that training translate over into your business life, or has it translated over into your business life? Because I'm assuming from what you said, you wouldn't trade your time in the Air Force for anything.
No, well, I mean, obviously, you talked about making some good decisions about who you associate yourself with. Marrying my wife was the single biggest decision I've ever made in my life. And it was the best decision that I've ever made in my life. And super smart lady. She's a dentist. I mean, she can run circles around me intellectually. But what I would tell you is, those 6 years active duty, they changed me for the better in so many different ways. It's sort of ironic that you asked me this question, because there is something that I have in my office on my wall, and it's on every single team member's desk or office. And it's a paragraph, a couple paragraphs at the top. It says mental toughness. You can sort of Google this. I was given this by my first ROTC commander back in the Air Force back in 1992. And actually, I'm sorry, 1992. And it's been on my desk or in my college room or apartment every day since then. And it's, you go through and you read it, and it talks about how you need to be mentally strong, even in the face of adversity. Now, that's applicable whether you're in the military and you're trying to take a hill, or something similar to that, or whether you're in the civilian life, the civilian world, where you don't get a promotion, or you don't get to go on this business trip that you want to go on, right? Or you lose this sale, right? Staying mentally tough. I was not mentally tough before I got into the Air Force. I just wasn't. And you go through that experience, and you leave stronger most times. Not every, it's just like anything, there's exceptions. But I left with a much stronger desire to perform and get it done. And I will tell you, the first time that I briefed a general officer, I was a brand new second lieutenant, just finished intelligence training. General John Miller, actually, ironically, a Clemson graduate. He was the 57th Wing Commander at Nellis Air Force Base. And I was given the distinct privilege of briefing him. My first job in the Air Force was working for the Air Force Top Gun program. And one of the things that I did is I was responsible for briefing the air crews before they flew their Top Gun missions. So I'm actually briefing him ahead of the air crews actually coming into town. And I get up there to brief him. And we're about 5 minutes into the meeting, and he asks me a question. Now, at Intel school, we are trained, if a general officer asks you a question, do not BS him. Okay, here's your standard canned answer. General, I do not know the answer, but when I leave here, I will go find the answer and I will get it back to you immediately. Okay, that's acceptable. Don't try to BS him, right? So he asked me this question. I don't know the answer. And I give him the standard answer. He said, okay. So about 5 minutes later, he asked me another question. And I give him the same standard canned answer. What they didn't tell me at Intel school is you can only do that one time. Because the second time, General John Miller, who's got his reading glasses on, looks at me, goes, Lieutenant Medici, here's what I want you to do. When we leave this meeting, I want you to go out and I want you to find the person that you're going to ask all these questions to. And I want you to have him brief me the next time that you're supposed to come in here. And I just literally just started sweating, right? I mean, it was a very difficult day. But from that moment, at 23, 22 years old, I set out to make sure that any time that I was up in front of somebody and I was presenting, that I was not just one question deep, I was 6 questions deep. That I knew the details, I knew the answer, that it was going to be very hard before any meeting I go present in front of other people. I think about the top 10 questions that I could get, and I have those nailed, right? And every now and then there is a curveball, but there won't be 2. There won't be 2. And I had to learn that sort of hard lesson back in 1995, and I have not since forgotten it.
I think it's a great lesson. And, you talk about a service that somebody can do you. What a tremendous service that general gave you by not just letting you slide. In American business, a lot of managers let you slide and don't hold you to that standard. And, sometimes you could say, well, that's been a hard ass or whatever. But think of, just the excellence that has inspired in you for the last 30 years. So it's a great story on both sides of that interaction, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I am blessed to think about the people that help mold and shape me, because it was a very raw piece of clay. Right? And it took some seasoned people to sort of shape this thing to where I am now. And I'll tell you, seeing my COO, who's actually sitting right outside right now, she's been with me for 13 years. She started as our nanny. She moved down from Indiana and went to school here at UTA. And part-time, she sort of nannied our kids while she went to school, put herself through undergraduate, got her bachelor's degree. And then we needed her a couple more years. She got her master's degree in marketing, went off for a few years, had her sort of fill of working for big companies like Coca-Cola and Kraft Heinz. And then I stole her back 4 years ago. And just to see her grow into this amazing woman, this amazing professional, and now to say, I'm going to entrust you with this company as COO, and you're going to run all the operations, and I'll provide some strategic oversight and leadership around it. But she's just to see that, it sort of makes me sort of think about 30 years ago when I was sort of the one being molded. Now I'm actually doing the molding, and that really is just, for me, it's a blessing.
Well, very good. Well, I'm looking at my watch here, and I think our time is just about up. But Jeff, I want to tell you, it's been a pleasure to learn about you and about your company, and both companies, and what you've been able to accomplish there. And I'm gonna archive this, and when Fury Athletix is rivaling Nike, I'm gonna say, hey, I knew this guy back when he was working out of an Airstream.
First podcast.
Yeah, it's going to be a great story for me. So congratulations to you. Good luck to you. If you come to Memphis, let me know. I'll introduce you to a whole bunch of people if you need it. So
no, that's great. Listen, the more friends, the better, especially in a business like Fury Athletix. And I really appreciate you taking all this time today. Hopefully, folks that are listening, hopefully they got a little bit out of this, and hopefully this is what you wanted. This is not something that I normally do. And again, I'm very, very thankful that you had us on today.
Well, we're going to have your website up during the talk, and we showed the website. So hopefully, so if you get a huge spike in sales, I'm just saying,
Hey, I've got no problem paying commissions for people that take care of me.
All right, man. All right. Well, Jeff, thank you all for watching. Jeff is going to go make some badass hats and develop some great real property, and I'm going to go get some justice. This is Alan Crone. I'm the CEO of the Crone Law Firm. Thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this, and who are we kidding? This was a great show. Please email it, share us on social media. Let's get the word out about Fury Athletix, and hope everybody has a great time, and I'll see you next time.